And you are where in Europe? Where are
I
you
am
located?
in France.
In France. Okay. So tell me, refresh my memory, would you, about how the work that you're doing and you have your LLC is Empowered something. What is it?
Yeah, Empowered Leadership Cultivation.
Okay. So tell me about what you do and how you think our audience is going to benefit from that.
Well, we do all things keep people in culture. So people advisory, consulting around culture building, talent acquisition, retention, um, performance management. We do a lot of leadership development, and we do a lot of DEI. So I think that's how we got connected.
Fascinating. Okay. And is it DEI still okay in France? Because it's not okay here right now.
Well, honestly, in France, I would tell you that they're way behind. So it's most people don't even know what DEI stands for here.
Mhm.
Um, there is the concept. They are just at the beginning stages of the burgeoning consulting and advisory around it. UK, for example, is further ahead. Germany is probably further ahead. France is kind of still just getting started.
Okay. All right. And so what made you move? Because you used to be in the United States. Tell me about your move and what prompted that.
So I lived in Chicago, went through COVID in Chicago by myself. My husband was in France at the time, because he's French, and decided I didn't have to. I wasn't relegated to staying put because I could do this from anywhere. That COVID kind of taught me that. And so with everyone else deciding they can have a lot more flexibility on where they do their work, I did the same. And I still serve a lot of American clients, and I just go back and see them, and then I come back to France. It's the same as if I lived in California, for example.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Okay. And so France you love because.
Ooh, it's beautiful. It is less chaotic. It's very calm here. They have built into their culture rest, um, and they are not as they don't have to be, but they are not as charged all the time to work. It is
Mhm.
way more balanced here. And as a type A perfectionist person, recovering perfectionist personality, it's really helped me a lot to calm down a little bit.
Yes. So our audience is white women over 40 who are inclined to want to make a difference and advance racial equity in our country.
Mhm.
Sometimes the cost is greater than others these days, but we are
Yes.
still in it. And part of the culture of the United States for, women of a certain age who've already done their career, by the time they're 40, they're empty nesting a little, they're tired of the one career, there's some life transition happening. And it is a time when we find ourselves with resources, time, and money that we didn't have before. And what do we want our life to mean? What legacy do we want to leave? Which is why I thought that what you have to bring to women is
Mhm.
important. Because one of the things we're having the hardest time with is resting at a time when it feels like cocooning. The United States is not what it was, and we don't yet know what it's going to be. And everything is shifting around us. It's turning to goo. We're stewing in it. And
Mhm.
either our nervous systems are getting activated, and so we are being frozen with fear, or we are trying to distract ourselves with food or drink or sex or drugs or something else so we don't have to feel this pain. Or we are doing the only thing we know to do, which is put the gas pedal all the way down and full speed ahead into some new something that's going to make a difference until it doesn't. And then we start that cycle all over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when
I
you get
think
that,
what I hear, I spend a lot of time listening to people who don't look like me. Um, I know what it means to be a white woman in the DEI space. I've been schooled and I've learned a lot. And the sense of urgency and the constant work. and the perfectionism are all tenets of white supremacy, actually, that have bled into our corporate cultures in the US. Um, if I had anything to say to people who are really worried, um, even as white women over 40, um, who, for example, might not have the direct concern of losing their reproductive rights, for example,
Mhm.
is that we have an enormous amount of influence and power, and we need to remember that.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that we need to be intentional about using it for good and not for bad. We can unintentionally use it for bad. And so we need to learn a lot about ourselves and how we show up to know whether we're doing that or not. Um, my, you know, my Black colleagues and my Black friends would tell me that we need to mind our own communities. That's where we can make the most difference. I don't get a lot of chance to do that because I don't have anyone in my communities that is my family that is on the other side of that spectrum. They don't speak to me anymore. So um, I don't, my circles are very diverse for a million different reasons. But most of us are in communities that look a lot like us. And my invitation is change that drastically. Mind your own people, be honest and upfront and, um, bold with them about their way they think and their beliefs and how they're showing up and how it is faulty in a lot of ways. Um, and learn about yourself and learn about the people around you, and extend yourself uncomfortably to other communities to understand them better.
Yes. And don't center yourself in the conversation.
Oh yeah, no,
You are
no.
not the norm.
People who are when you were, I do a lot of um, it is one of the biggest fundamental tenets of my business and my life that if you do not do the self-reflection and self-work, you won't be very effective for very long, no matter what you apply that to. And so you have to be very much aware of who you are and how you're showing up. People who are really comfortable with themselves don't have to center themselves.
Right.
They center everyone else. It is a show of discomfort and insecurity to constantly center yourself.
Yeah. There. Can we unpack a little bit more what you said about our perfectionism as women in America in business and how that's rooted in white supremacy and capitalism?
Yes, and I don't want to misspeak. I took a class actually for white people about racism and
Okay.
systemic racism in the US.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a while ago. It was during COVID. Um, but there are like 7 or 8 tenets of kind of philosophies and ways of being in the US, especially. Now, this occurs in other countries, but we've got it pretty down pat in the US. And a sense of urgency, perfectionism, your worth being tied to what you do instead of being who you are and existing. Those are all tenets of white supremacy. And actually, when I went through that class, I said, but that's bad for the rest of us too. Like that's bad for everybody. And I said, well, that's kind of the point. That is true, and that is how we got where we are. We've got a bunch of very stressed out people in the U.S. that, economically, it's just so different because nothing is provided. We are at risk of our health if we lose our jobs.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen over here, and capitalism still happens here.
Right.
They don't have to be all or nothing. But I guess the point is, um, we've made so little progress on balance in our lives from a work perspective versus a life perspective. Um, and it's showing the ugly ramifications of that. Perfectionism, perfectionism is based in a lot of things. Mine has some trauma related to it, but it really is. I don't remember who quoted this, but perfectionism really is the enemy of good.
Mhm.
It's the enemy of getting things done. It causes procrastination and anxiety and stress. If we can just put ourselves out there to strive to be great but not perfect, we will get so much further than we do now.
Right. And so much more inclusive.
Yes,
So
yes.
much more inclusive. And so when in business or in life, the white model is the standard, whatever that is, of hair or of, thinness is the ever perfectionism of the perfect diet, the perfect body, the perfect whatever it is. And then we, I can't remember what the word is. When you take over, like all of a sudden braids are my thing. When I acquire
Cultural appreciation or cultural appropriation.
cultural appropriation. But when this is the standard, I think because one of the things that I have been watching, particularly in this last couple of years, is how it is that people of color carry white supremacy in the workplace, even to
Well,
their own detriment. They and white women vote for it to our own detriment,
yes.
because why do you
It's
imagine?
ingrained in us. It's ingrained in us. It defines our worth in that culture.
Mhm. Yeah, no matter.
Yeah, I have struggled with, for example, I've struggled with my weight since I became an adult, since I went
Mhm.
through puberty. Um, as long as I'm always working on it, I'm acceptable.
Yes.
If I decide to say the hell with it, everyone's got a problem with that.
Right.
It's the just the beauty standard is so racist in the way that
Mhm.
we decide what is beautiful and what is not.
Right.
Um, we have so much work to do, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess what breaks my heart the most about this administration is that we're going to have to pick up the pieces at some point and start all over, not start all over, but start from way back. And we don't have to. The things that are most disheartening to me right now, and you know what's funny? I thought I would look at the US and say, well, at least I'm not there. I feel just as bad as I did when I was there. But
Yeah.
the things that are most disheartening, companies that have just thrown DEI out the window when it doesn't affect, like, their people still care. Like,
Yes.
you have to decide why did you decide to do this stuff in the first place?
Mhm.
Was it for optics? Was it performative for the public or for your shareholders or whatever it was? Or was it for your own people? Because your own people are watching and they're not happy with the way you're deciding to just discard the stuff that mattered to them.
Right.
And that's going to have ramifications at some point. Maybe
Mhm.
not in a recession, but at some point it's going to make a difference into what happens with your company.
Mhm.
We don't have to be at the behest of fear-mongering governments around what we decide is important to our values and what we do as a group of people doing something important. And
Mhm.
the most disheartening thing is that we're just throwing it out before we even analyze what we're doing. The work what's funny is the work that my firm does is is going to keep going, whether we call it DEI or not, because it's the same work.
Yeah.
Inclusion and equity and having a range of people from different backgrounds is powerful no matter what you call it. And we're going to keep going whether you call it that or not.
Right. Right. Because it is respect for people. It is
Yes.
just that simple and
And
just
it's
that
giving people what they need to be successful, which only
right.
behooves employers
Right.
themselves.
Right. So I've seen two things happen now. The first one, of course, was that was why I started this podcast, Reclaiming Joy in DEI, a year ago, because
Uh-huh.
I was working with so many women who were burning out after 25 years of working in this space. And they were so tired of the performative, check the box so we can keep the contract behavior. And those people, as soon as this administration said DEI is canceled, they were out the door. They were like, good, we never liked it anyway. And so those ones sorted out right away. But now I see that second layer, and the second layer are the ones who have received federal grant money for any project, for aerospace or communications or any major infrastructure project in this country, whose funds have been frozen, literally frozen now.
Mhm.
And one of the qualifiers of whether or not it might get unfrozen is whether you have DEI initiatives anywhere in your system. And they are in a different place because this is not performative DEI for them. This is real. But now I have clients who have lost their contracts, their consulting contracts, not because they've yet been sanctioned at the company, but because they are afraid. And here's what they've said to one of my people I know that caught my attention. They've said, look, and this person was already in the middle of the work with mid-management in this large organization. We know you've changed your verbiage on your webpage and everything, but if anybody does a deep dive, they're going to see that you were DEI and that we started this under that. And we're afraid we're going to lose our contracts or our funding, and we can't take the risk. That is the part that shifted my attention as we're heading into season 3, from reclaiming joy in DEI to reimagining it. And that's
Right.
not for the ones who just want to check the box. That's for the ones that really, really, really care about their
Yeah.
people and
And
their
that I think that
process.
is our opportunity as a DEI community, frankly. If
Yeah,
we dig in and work with the companies and the
yeah,
organizations that were serious in the first place,
yes,
and we examine their values and what they stand for and make sure that's threaded through every part of their organization,
right.
regardless again of what you call it,
Yep.
they will be ahead of the companies who didn't bother and just discarded it for 4 years. So
Yes,
let's show them what it looks like.
yes, yes. And how, yeah, yeah. And in a way that's going to be profitable for them now and set them up for great success in the future.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Which is the case in every client I work with.
It is.
It is not, one of the most frustrating, enraging, frankly, um, sound bites from this administration around DEI is that we just want the best people.
I know.
Um, as if all white men are the best people, um, which is an incredibly, just put the ism on the end, it's got all of them, right? The whole point of diversity specific initiatives was to cast a bigger net so that you knew whether you were getting the best people, because you are not getting the best people if you are going to the same alma maters as your leadership and picking the same white people with the same backgrounds as you have. I can guarantee that is not the case.
Yes.
Um, so the mindset that they're putting out there is just so faulty. And we have
Mhm.
a lot of work to do to change that. And
Mhm.
I think the best way to do it is to help the companies that are serious about it and show them how they can be extremely successful with this
Right, right.
so
And
that you can see the difference.
I went into a facility recently, and the CEO was parroting the meritocracy talk. And it's such a fine line for me to know you just met somebody, how direct you can be or how to quite approach that, and to understand that DEI is meritocracy. What you're talking about, these quotas and whatever, that was all the fear factor in the 60s over, never
Well, I mean,
materialized
I
that
would
way,
venture to say that there's no such thing as meritocracy.
right?
There's no such thing. It
Yeah,
doesn't exist.
yeah.
Your decisions around what what warrants merit
Mhm.
have much bias in them. There's no such thing as meritocracy.
Right, right.
We're choosing based on what we're comfortable with, based on what we've seen, based on
Mhm,
what we've heard. That
mhm.
has very little to do with it's like perception versus reality, that conversation.
Right,
So much of meritocracy is based on perception, you'll never get to the reality.
right, right.
I don't
And
believe in
your
it. I
personal
don't think it's actually
biases.
exists.
and
Yeah,
your personal
absolutely.
biases. It's what I say, you don't hire somebody based on their resume. You hire them based on their energy and your biases when you interview them.
Right,
It's a gut check. It's a fit. Do they fit
right.
here?
And what does that mean, right?
And what does that mean? Yeah, all those subjective things. And if you haven't done the work to unpack your biases, then
Right.
it's a crapshoot. It's just a crapshoot. Yeah. So tell me about your business and tell me what you do now and how people engage with you.
Well, we do a few things. I work mostly in the professional services company space, so law firms, accounting firms, etc.
Mhm.
Um, we do everything from culture surveys, so we can assess what the culture looks like, examination of HR data to make sure there's equity and inclusion, stuff like that. We can do an analysis on if different groups of people are experiencing the place differently.
Mhm.
Um, we do um, every kind of cultural strategy you can think of. So talent acquisition all the way to retention and even what do you do with alumni?
Mhm.
Um, we do a lot of leadership development. So leaderships, we believe heavily in emotional intelligence and again, self-reflection to get there. So we've just developed a a bunch of sessions for leaders around um, how you understand what you're bringing to the table and why, so that you can understand your impact and how to change your impact if it's not perfect. I use that word perfect, but it's not
Uh-huh.
great.
Uh-huh.
Um, we do Gen Z training for communication skills. We do a lot of executive coaching around all kinds of things. We do culture crisis situations where usually an incident has happened and they need someone to come in and help clean up the mess,
Mhm.
and put them on like a values-based behaviors, um, performance management stuff. Um, we do specific stuff around bias. We haven't done one in a while, I'll be honest with you. Um,
Right.
so we do like fractional chief people officer stuff. So for firms that are not big enough to require a full-time chief people officer, we can be the hands-on day-to-day, and also get the strategic stuff done at a lower price point than having us do all the consulting instead.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell.
That's nice. That's nice. And what's your role in that company?
I own the company.
Yay! And that's why you can do it from anywhere.
Yes, I own the company. I started the company. I was a partner with Ernst& and Young I was there 16 years and left in about 2013 and started my company.
Okay. All right. So entrepreneurial. And
Yes,
how
I've gotten there. I was definitely a corp. I drank the corporate Kool-Aid for a long time and then made the leap.
and so most of the time, what was the transformational factor for you that caused you to make a leap of faith like that? Because I would imagine that somebody who's done 13 years there is pretty risk averse. And
I am still risk averse. And
okay,
look, I say that having moved my entire life to France last year. So
right.
I don't think I see it the same way as other people see it. But um, this is going to sound like a crazy story, but I was used to working 75 hours a week. That I didn't mind it. I enjoyed my work. I did miss having any kind of personal life for a while. But I came to Paris and I met my husband.
Oh,
And on my second trip here, we were sitting in a cafe across the bridge from Notre Dame, so we could watch everyone coming down the bridge from Notre Dame. And I was doing a conference call while we were at a cafe in the middle of Paris. And without any judgment, he just looked at me with curiosity and said, "Do you love this much?" And
hmm.
nobody had ever asked me that before, if I really loved it enough to spend this much effort on it.
Wow.
And I went back to, at the time, Chicago and said, the culture in this particular office is really not for me. Like, I am not able to do my best work here. And do I want to do that for 15 more years, or do I have the time and effort and energy to go out and do something different? I felt like I had I could have way more impact and influence as a third party than I was as a partner in my own firm. And that
Mhm.
was kind of the decision maker for me.
Wow. And so I have questions because I've taken leaps of faith in my life. Was that when you leave that, you have a vision of what, it's going to be painful. You have a vision of what it's going to be like and what it's going to land. When I was midair in the messy middle, the landing zone changed. Did that happen to you?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I came out, I had this brilliant idea that I would do what I still call peer advisory experiences.
Mhm.
So I would put leaders together and give them the tools to be extraordinary leaders, but in a group setting and do individual coaching as well. We do that now, but we didn't do it in the beginning. I did business strategy. I did let me show you how to make more revenue because I was a revenue producer at my old job.
Right.
Um, it took me several years to get my messaging correct so I could do the work I most wanted to do.
Mhm.
Um, and I had to give myself the grace for that because I just wasn't used to not having, 200 branding people to work with me on that as I did before. It wasn't the same as, calling up a Fortune 100 company and saying, "Hey, can we come over and have lunch and talk about XYZ?" It was very easy then. I had to learn a whole other realm of being in the industries that
Mhm.
I'm working in. Um, and it took a couple of years to really get it going. It was not, I always said to myself, I can always go and get a job again. It's going to be okay. If I have to go get a job, I'll get a job. And thankfully I never had to, but it's a process. It's a process to change your mindset from uh, possibilities are infinite
Right.
to from, I know what I'm supposed to do every single day to produce X result, and this is what my people want from me, and just do it and you'll be good. To
Mhm.
the whole world is your oyster. How do you figure out what you want and how do you decide what your niche is when you can do so many different things?
Right.
But it's important to get there as quickly as you can, to get the messaging right and your niche right really
Mhm.
quickly.
Mhm. And how to bring people together, how to decide what business model as you build the team that is going to grow with you.
Hmm.
Who are the first three hires you made?
An admin, someone to do a lot of the work, especially in the DEI space. I don't frankly have a lot of credibility as a white woman that grew up in the US.
Hmm.
I have to have people that are very different looking than I am for that, that come with completely different perspectives and frankly, more influence in the conversation that I have.
Hmm.
It took me 2 years to pick my team that was willing to work with. And I
Okay.
have incredible people um, in my circle, and we do work that is meaningful. And what's funny is, as much as I've always had the reputation for being pretty bold, pretty straightforward in the way I talk,
Yeah.
very blunt sometimes. I call it blunt with a hug. The people on my team are even bolder, and the clients are even more impressed with that. So I've learned so much from my own team too along this journey.
Well, I tell people the higher you go up, the less people are willing to be direct and honest with you. And you kind
And
of
that
get,
is inclusive. That's
yes,
inclusion. Being honest with people is inclusion.
yes. And being able to receive that is growth.
Yes.
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 And so when they come up and somebody is actually direct with them, sometimes it takes them, they don't quite know how to react to that because it hasn't happened in so long, if ever. If
Right.
ever. And
And that's
and
my role. I think as a person that looks like me, one of the places I can be most influential is challenging leaders that
Mhm.
are, you can imagine what they look like.
Mhm.
Um, Older white
Yep.
males,
Yep.
um, challenging them on their own ways of thinking about themselves and their own firms
Right.
and the impact they're having on the people around them.
Yes.
Um, and I love that work. I've gotten good at that work.
Mhm.
My email signature block actually says intention does not equal impact. And I have to remind myself of that every day to be aware of the impact I'm having versus my intentions. My intentions are somewhat completely irrelevant compared to
Mhm.
the impact that I'm having.
Mhm. And so now help me, because I just finished a project that I've been retired and independent for so long now that I haven't had to massage those male egos for a while. And I forgot some things about white male stuff. And one of the things that happens in our women over 40, the reason why why I work with white women specifically, which doesn't mean that we don't have black and brown voices and I don't have black and brown mentors, but it is because we have proximity and persuasive power with the white men who are making those policy strategies and decisions, right? We have
Yes.
access that a black woman will never have access to.
Hopefully not never. Hopefully at some
Well,
point that'll be the
yes,
case.
thank you. In today's world, right? We can go places and have conversations. But when we get in the room, we shut that down because we're being nice or we're being good or we're being whatever. And I found myself not saying as bluntly and boldly as I normally do with these white male authority figures. And it wasn't until I realized and remembered, oh yeah, that's right. It has to be their idea. Oh, I know how to do that. And there's a natural flow in my white rhythm of, centering it around that male executive.
Right.
Is there a different approach that I can learn from you?
I don't really, I guess there's two things.
Okay.
There's a big difference between nice and kind.
Yes.
I won't be nice. To me, nice is useless. I
Mhm.
would much rather be kind.
Yes.
And kindness requires honesty, in
Yes.
my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, I don't make it their idea.
Mhm.
I'm not tap dancing for anybody.
Uh-huh.
Um, what my approach is typically help me understand how that's okay. Um, let me help you understand what the impact on another person is when that is said or that is done, or
Okay.
you act in that way, or
Mhm.
you know, perform microaggressions for somebody.
Mhm.
Um, I can give you an example. I was facilitating a meeting with a bunch of partners in a partner group who were having a really hard time having effective, productive discussions around how to run their firm,
Mhm.
including how to compensate people, all those things. And as you can imagine, the people who are older and on, nearer to retirement want to keep things the way they are because they benefit from that a great deal, especially
Right.
financially.
Yeah.
Um, and the newer guard leadership wants to change things because they can see the lift that everyone gets in the firm if there's change, positive
Right.
change. And so there was a leader who would literally start screaming at people in meetings, and that was not unusual. And you know, I've not run any meeting where people start screaming at each other, so it's weird for me. I know
Yeah.
it's not weird for some people, but it's weird for me.
Right.
And he shut down discussion on topics that he didn't want to change anything about.
Right.
And so I happened to be in the meeting, facilitating the meeting where that happened. And I said, do you think that is a normal way to communicate with somebody? And his response was, I think these people are too sensitive if they're worried about getting yelled at or, it was pushing responsibility for how he behaved on everybody else as being too sensitive.
Mhm.
And I looked him dead in the face, and this was Zoom, by the way. I looked him dead in the face on Zoom, whatever that means,
Uh-huh.
and said, isn't it overly sensitive to resort to yelling at people? Like, it seems like that's a little bit of projection to me.
Mhm.
It's waking people up about the way they're showing up that they are completely unaware of.
Right.
And most people have good intentions.
Yes.
95% of people have good intentions.
Yes.
It's that they walk through life having no idea the impact they're having,
Mm.
unless they're extremely awful, right?
Right.
Or you can't be extremely good all the time. There's going to be a little bit of fluctuation. Most of us are landing somewhere in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And we need to seek feedback and do the work on ourselves and learn how to self-reflect properly. If we're ever going to get further away from extremely awful to the other side of that spectrum. So I feel like it's part of my job in what I do and the work I do to help leaders understand the impact they're having and how what they're doing, saying, thinking, deciding lands with the people that they're leading. I don't think they get enough of that. They're mostly too afraid of the answers. And they shouldn't be because it's powerful to understand it.
Mhm.
There's no disempowerment at all from understanding how you're showing up. It's
Right.
only empowerment.
Right.
Yeah.
And the impact that it's having.
Yes.
Yeah. And so how do you communicate that, or so is it your assessments that reveal some of that I call those communication audits. You call them a culture something, right?
Yeah. Surveys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the cultural surveys usually don't single out particular people where there's issues. You can see
Right.
from the data sometimes. Like
Hmm.
I did a cultural survey for a firm. Um, we probably had about 200 people.
Yeah.
And you could see in a certain practice, like a subset of that group of
Yeah.
people, that the women were getting paid like 20% less than the men. And the women were also leaving in droves out of that practice.
Hmm.
Like that was easy to figure out, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, it's usually more subtle than that. Um, we can do a combination of surveys, which is a lot of questions around, everything from compensation to what opportunities I feel I have to um, whether I have a good relationship with my mentor or leader or the person I report to, all
Mhm.
kinds of things. Like some of our things are like 50 questions long.
Mhm.
We can also do focus groups where we ask deeper dive questions once
Yeah.
we have the cultural survey results to get
Mhm.
context. Context is very important.
Yeah.
Um, and we can do individual interviews. We do a lot of individual interviews for culture crisis situations
Mhm.
to get again more depth and context around what we're learning through surveys. So there's
Mhm.
all kinds of ways to get at it, but you got to set it up so that you get good data. The other thing I will say is if you're going to do that work, you
Mhm.
better, sure as hell, better tell your people what you learned and what you're going to do about it.
Yes. Follow
Please,
through. Yes.
just that, the effort of putting that together, to doing that work and putting it together and deciding what's next is a cultural lift if you do it right. But if you do that and don't communicate anything and nothing changes and you just go on your merry way, it is a major cultural deficit.
Yes. Yes. And to try to get them to rally again for the next consultant or the next time you
Yeah.
try to do that, every time. And if you
Right.
failed two or three times, which is what happens before I get called in, because I get called in for the hard cases, then it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. There's
Yeah.
so much under the water.
We don't trust people now. Like there's a distrust
Yes,
now, and it's
absolutely.
way harder to figure out what really needs to happen in those scenarios.
Right. And in those distrust scenarios, have you seen, because I also saw a fear of retaliation, because maybe one of those other unsuccessful attempts where they spoke, then after nothing happened, then through the mid-management systems, they felt like they got censured even more for daring to try.
Right. And that indicates that there are systemic problems with your culture.
Yeah.
You don't have the culture you thought you did. It's very hard to assess your own culture,
Yes.
but if people are afraid to tell you the truth about what's going on and
Hmm.
raise issues, then you don't have a good culture.
Yeah. It's simple.
And you're looking to develop the kind of culture where people can be honest and constructive,
Mhm.
and know that whatever they say will be considered. Does it mean you do everything your people say should be done? Or no, you get to make the final calls. You're not relinquishing control if that's an issue for you. You
Right.
are taking into consideration what you couldn't know on your own.
Right.
And as a leader, making decisions about what's best for everybody involved.
Yeah. And so once you do that work, how do you set it up so it's sustainable when you leave?
Well, we usually stick around for a while to help them implement and hold them accountable to what's happening. So we're
Yeah.
there for probably 12 to 18 months,
Yeah.
um, doing all kinds of things, learning and development and specific strategies and setting up measurements for how those work and revamping performance management and making people accountable to what they're doing. Um,
Right.
so we're there, for 12 to 18 months. I keep in contact with them and do little things here and there for them to see how they're doing. But it usually takes that kind of effort.
Yeah.
This is not like installing a new software. It's people. It's going to be a little more complicated. It's going to be a longer road.
Right.
Um, if you set it up and you hold people accountable to how it turns out, that makes a huge difference. You must make people account. That's actually the book I'm writing. Leaders who are not accountable for their behaviors are not changing their behaviors.
Absolutely. When will that book be out? Because I need a copy for every client I have.
In about 6 months, I think,
All right. Awesome.
by fall.
That's beautiful. So what do you think? Resilience Reimagined is where we're headed for season 3, but we started out season 2 with resilience redefined, and now definition is not enough because the sand is shifting so much in the United States. We just have to rethink everything,
Mm,
as we move through. And rest is part of resilience, and it is a survival skill. It's a
yes.
strategy. What other strategies or practices would you recommend?
I think the two that are most successful for me are self-care, like a lot of self-care.
Hmm.
Make sure that you're not ingesting news just for ingesting news's sake. It's not worth it. You're going to find out that, in our world, you're going to know within a few days of what's happened, right? Um, think I'm very much a believer in staying in your lane,
Hmm.
of knowing your lane where you have the most influence and effect
Yeah.
and being extraordinary in that lane.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of us don't know where to, for example, a lot of us don't know where to start with political activism.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have children, for example. I wouldn't go to the school board. I'd feel silly going to the school board. Um, but I have, for example, I love I love immigrants and I love immigration. And now I'm an immigrant too, so same deal. Um, there are things I can do to help immigrants get either start their own businesses and grow them fast so they can be successful, helping them with their resumes so they can get the jobs and the professions they actually came from instead of the jobs that are available for people without, you know, the same skills they have. So know what lane you are in or want to be in because of the skills you have and drive that lane.
Mhm.
Um, and practice self-care,
I love it.
learn meditation, do it religiously, take walks,
Mhm.
enjoy social interactions. You can become very isolated in times like these, you know.
Right.
Don't be isolated. Force yourself to be out there having conversations,
Mhm.
um, constructive ones. I don't think you can have a lot of constructive ones online right now.
Right.
Um, we're probably better off getting together and talking in real life.
Yeah.
But you can't, it's kind of like put the oxygen mask on yourself before the person next to you. Make sure you're okay and you're well rested and you're ready to go and you know what your value is in the lane you're in, and then go do it.
Mhm. Mhm. And I do think too that, I've part of the reason I started the podcast was to keep me from reverting to my white bubble when things got hard because I knew I
Hmm.
could, right? But one of the things that I watch for is people being able to, when you say stay in your lane, to know why. What's your big why? For me, it was, well, what has racism cost me? Because I was raised pretty isolated from all of that in the West.
Hmm.
And when I got what it cost me, then the imperative to use my privilege for good became an imperative, not just a convenience. I'll do it when it's convenient and not too difficult. The rest I'll forget about. So staying
Hmm.
in your lane is part of that meditation of, you know, what does this administration cost me? Where is my sphere of influence? And where do I think I can move the needle? Even if it's 1% a day, at the end of 100 days, you've made a major shift somewhere in some
Yes.
pond you're swimming in.
Yeah. And
We
it's going
think
to
it
take
has to be
that. We
big.
cannot sit, don't sit still. We can't sit still.
Yeah, yeah. And schools of fish move better together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So for our audience, I always ask, what do you think would be beneficial for them to know? And I want to know, how does anybody get in touch with you? Oh, by the way, I want to talk to you after this. I need to talk to you. But how does somebody talk to you about how they can work with you or, access your information?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn at Trisha Dow.
Okay.
My email is trisha@empoweredlc.com.
Hmm.
They can reach out that way. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Yeah.
I'm on WhatsApp if they want to call me from any country in the world. They can find me there.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, just send an email if you want to have a conversation.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you for your time today, Trish. I surely
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. It's been a
It was
lovely
great to meet you.
conversation. It's great to meet you too.